It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, it's Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I'm having a blast kicking off 2025 with wonderful interviews, great people, learning great things. And we're staying with our theme of interviewing fabulous women leaders and the great men who make an impact and work with us to expand our worlds. And that is who I have with me today. Niraj Chhabra is the managing director of Sidebar Advisors. His central focus includes family finances, tax, estate strategies, retirement, and financial planning for small businesses. His goal, and this is very much where he is very important to him, his goal is to help attorneys navigate their unique tax challenges and modify their financial plans as their careers evolve. He does this by offering attorneys holistic financial planning and complementary educational workshops. Here's what I'm going to say. I've gotten to know Niraj over the last, year or more. And he is a person who is always willing to jump on the phone, who's always willing to say, how can I help you? Always willing to give of himself, to just sit down and talk family, fun things we eat. And he brings this to working with people and truly getting the essence and heart of people and what's important to him. So Niraj, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks for having me.
So this whole financial planning things, there's a lot of financial planners out there. And now let's just say that. And that's good. And that's important because there's a lot of people out there and we all need advice that is outside of us, outside of what we see. But my curiosity is, why did this career draw you? What was this about this career that drew you to it?
I don't think it was my plan to become a financial planner, but I didn't even know it existed when I was in college. But the short version is my mom immigrated to this country, not really having a lot of financial education, not having a lot of resources. But somehow she put two kids through college without us taking out a penny of student loan debt. She paid off
Wow.
her mortgage in 15 years. And she wasn't, some business professional. She was a working class nurse, working double shifts and things of that nature. But I remember at the time thinking how hard she worked. And all she really understood were CDs and bonds and everything like that. This was during the dot-com era where everybody was making money super easily. So when I was in college, I happened to come across a flyer at the student center that says, free workshop on how mutual funds work. And this was always of interest to me. So I attended it. It was sponsored by a club called the Financial Management Club. I ended up becoming president of the club, and somebody approached me and
And
said, "Well,
that's who you are in leadership. You just step up. As I've gotten to know you, it's like, oh, no, let me help you. I was like, I'll step up. I'll do that.
I guess you're right. I didn't connect those dots, but yeah, I ended up doing that because it was something I was passionate about, and I felt like it wasn't. It was really exclusive to the students that were receiving financial aid, but I wanted to, broaden this to the rest of the campus. So we did, and somebody approached me and says, why don't you consider making this a career? And I didn't even know it was a thing until that moment, but
You could do
I
this
was
as a
fortunate.
career. What would that look like?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't imagine doing anything else, but at the time they approached me and says, you could become a financial advisor and, you're already doing a lot of the same stuff, educating people. So it just felt natural and I've been doing it ever since.
You spent a lot of your careers working at very big companies, Ameriprise, I believe, and others. What drove
No
you?
others. It was just
No,
Ameriprise and then
just
Sidebar. So
Ameriprise.
I was there for over 17 years.
What drove you to go out on your own and create Sidebar Advisors? That's gutsy when you're with something that long.
Sure. Well,
And I want to acknowledge that as gutsy.
thank you. I was with Ameriprise for 17 years. The first 10 years was as an employee, as a financial advisor, but the last seven, I was a franchisee. So I was already a business owner. I was already, you know, I had to pick out my own office, had to get my own staff, had to decide on my health insurance, all of that stuff. It was just under the Ameriprise framework and umbrella. So I did have that entrepreneurial experience, early, probably about 10 years or so ago. What made us branch off from Ameriprise was just that we were it's like any other franchise. You open up a Dunkin' Donuts, they tell you, what brand of coffee to get, what, where to get your cups from. And it was the same thing with Ameriprise. It's a uniform franchise model. it just didn't fit for what we were trying to do and really focus on lawyers and in particular women lawyers. It was just a lot of red tape because they had to make sure that whatever I did was compliant and they couldn't make exceptions, because they always
Oh,
had to
you
assume
can't.
no exceptions whatsoever. So that was the reason that we needed exceptions, and that's part of the reason we decided to leave.
Is it? And this is such a leading, I'm like thinking this in my head. I was like, I know this is a leading question. But first of all, I want to just take a moment and say hats off to your mom.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without her.
And being able to come to this country, develop her skill set as a nurse and do what it is to raise two kids, put them through school, pay off mortgages, take care of your family is huge. How did that contribute to your focus on women? I mean, I'm making this leap, but I'm like, was there something else? Like, I'm making the leap, but I shouldn't, in a complete disclosure.
Sure. And I don't think you're wrong for making that leap. I don't think I connected those dots initially, that this is why I subconsciously focused my practice more on women, Even growing up, I had a softer spot for female friends versus male friends. And it's just always been, I think, just because of my upbringing. Over time, I mean, part of my experience at Ameriprise, we would get training on, why financial planning was different between men and women. And I think just because I could always picture my mom in those conversations, I gravitated more towards that and just found myself learning more about it and becoming more and more passionate about it over time.
So when you think about why financial planning is different for men and women, how do women see things differently than men?
I don't know if they necessarily see things differently. So when I first started getting this training, for example, we would be taught that women tend to be more conservative investors compared to men. So that was one example, but it wasn't the full story. As they continued to do more research, what they found was it's not that women want to be more conservative with their investments. It's that women just want more information before making a decision, whereas men tend to be a little bit more shoot for the hip from the hip. And I know we're generalizing a bit, but
Oh, you are not generalizing. I'm married.
okay, so you might be in that
And
same
speak.
scenario.
And I'm like, oh wow, Niraj was at the conversation Michael and I were having the other day. He's
Yeah.
just like, okay, so let's just go with this. I was like, hold on, we need more information. I seriously, this happened within the last week.
Oh,
So
wow.
no,
Okay.
you're not generalizing. You obviously were in our bedroom somewhere on a fly on the wall hearing
People are
the
going to misinterpret
conversation,
that,
so
but
to
yes.
speak.
So what we found was that it wasn't that women wanted to be more conservative with their investments. They just didn't have the time to do the research to feel more comfortable with that risk. But between packing their kids' lunches and having a career and all the other stuff that falls on women's shoulders, whether it's taking care of aging parents, all of that falls more on women than it does on men. So of course, there's no
Touche.
time to do the research to feel more comfortable with their investments and get more comfortable with their risk tolerance.
It's interesting you say that because you just brought back a memory to me of my dad, who was a self-made man, self-made investor. Like he was a reader, like he couldn't get enough of it. And he did very, very well in the market over the years, but he would read the Wall Street Journal, he would read the Times, the financials every day, cover to cover. And he's always like, oh my, you have to read more about this. You have to read this. You have to then go in and do an analysis on the 5 years and three. And he's always telling me, you got to read this, you got to do this. I was like, when? I'm getting up ready for work before the kids got up in the morning. Just what you're saying, right? Got the kids off to school, got myself to work. If when I was lucky, I grabbed in a workout on my way home to still get home before the babysitter left to, do dinner. And by the time your kids were in bed, you were like, I didn't have the brain power. I might have been able
Exactly.
to read, but I had no brain power to digest. So exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, a lot of women are in the exact same scenario, especially, with our focus being working with lawyers. They don't have the time between their demanding careers and everything else that's on their plate.
What have you learned now as the managing director of Sidebar Advisors? How are you guys doing this, moving it out of that franchise role? What have you learned as a leader?
The good thing is that when you're with a franchise model, you have a certain uniformity and a certain way of doing things that's worked in the past, but not necessarily where the future is heading. And as a leader, we get to be a lot more flexible and have a lot more fun. I get to make exceptions for my staff, I get to be a lot more understanding and things of that nature. So Everybody's got their own unique set of needs and things that they like about the job, and I get to run the business my way, the way that I enjoy doing it. So even though the financial industry tends to be a little bit more stuffy, a little bit more old school, we don't need it to be. We could be a little bit more hip. We could be a little bit more fun and flexible with our team, and I think it just leads to a better corporate culture.
And when you niche down, I know you do a lot of work in women's leadership and very much in the women's legal market. How have you worked and why have you worked this education piece in? Because every time I see you and chat with you, you're always about the education piece.
Yeah, I've never been a good quote unquote salesperson. And I think that it goes back to, if you want to trace it back as far as college, I would bring in speakers to the campus to talk about how to pay off your student loans, how to get your first house, why you should be investing in a Roth the second you graduate. So it was always part of my DNA. And then early in my career, I would teach seminars for different organizations and clubs and things of that nature. And then somebody approached me and said, "Hey, can we have you come in? We would like to offer continuing legal education to our members on this topic." And it just kind of grew from there, where it became
Sense.
pretty much our entire business model, where that's most of where our business generation's coming from, that and referrals.
What surprised you in leading this company or this career?
Sure. How much of a demand there was? There were times where I would think that, we're talking to a group of attorneys and, these are obviously very, very brilliant people who have hustled to get themselves through night school. They sat through, 3+ years of law school. These are people that sat through the bar, sometimes multiple states and things of that nature. I thought, okay, like I have to focus on the complex, the more intricate parts of financial planning, and that's not necessarily the case. Most of the time, we're getting back to basics, and the same challenges that people who are not attorneys face are the same challenges that attorneys face. They're still worried about how am I going to pay for my aging parent. They're still worried about even budgeting. They make more money, but they're still worried about budgeting between taxes and not qualifying for financial aid and having to pay out of pocket for their kids' education. It's all the same stuff. They have the same exact worries, and I think that was surprising.
Yeah, it does not. I think what you're saying makes an enormous amount of sense to me. People think, well, they're an attorney, or oh my goodness, they're so successful, they don't have these worries. Yet, the bigger the thing, the bigger the worry,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And sometimes we forget that. And as we scale companies and we work with our clients in scaling companies, we're always talking to them. Speak to your accountant, speak to your financial advisor, have a strong financial team you're working with to do this smart and not being playing Monday morning quarterback when there's a problem or an issue. What tips or advice do you have for leaders coming forward? Like what could we be looking at and what should we be looking forward to with this year in 25?
I think that that's an interesting question. I'm guessing you're talking about markets or finance related.
I'm actually, it was a double-sided question. So which go let's go that way first.
Let's start there. People always ask that question, now that XYZ person is in office,
Well,
regardless of
whenever
where.
there's a transition, well, and I agree with you. We're like you and I are always on the same page, Niraj. It's uncanny. Whenever you have a transition of the Oval Office and you have a transition of leadership, there's an impact financially. It doesn't matter who's in power; it just is.
100%, and I think that the inclination is, well, what do we do as a result of that transition? And oftentimes, clients are surprised to hear when I say nothing, you know, we have a plan, nothing's changed with your plans. The stock market goes up and it tends to be agnostic of who's in office. The stock market doesn't care if you're Democrat or Republican. It is going to go up most years and it's going to come down every 4 to 5 years, not always in the same order, not always, sometimes they're consecutive, but there's a pattern. And don't interrupt the compounding interest. Just let it be. I'm not saying that you can't have your own opinions on things, but it's not the time to react. You had a plan, stick with the plan.
It happens to be so true. And I was in a meeting, it had to be a couple of years ago. I had spoken at a large financial institution. Came back in a few weeks later. We did a follow up in person as everybody was in New York, etc. And they're like, "Oh, here I have a client coming in, love you to meet." So we did, and we had a lovely conversation. So the client goes, before we get started, let me just ask, the financial guy about the markets. I said, "Oh, no, I could ask you that, answer that." And he goes, "Really? Like you're in the markets? Like, do you work here?" I was like, "No,
Mm.
I've just been alive a while."
Yep.
And I was like, "Let me tell you, it's going to go up and then it's going to go down a bit. And then it's going to go back up, and then it's going to go down a bit. And everybody's going to get all worried, but you're going to take a breath because it's going to steady out and then it's going to go up again a bit." And the
Right.
financial guy sitting across the conference table goes, "Yeah, what she said." And it's exactly, and
How it
it's
goes.
so true. Have a plan and stick to your plan.
Unless there's something that changed in your circumstances, there's no reason to deviate from that plan. People
And I
forget
think
that.
that's a brilliant piece of information. Always look at your circumstances, where you are as that central access point, because that's what the piece is.
Yeah. People forget that you're not investing in politicians, you're investing in businesses, and businesses, they're, staffed with these great minds that their job is to really evolve and adjust and continue to turn a profit. They're literally getting paid to make sure that they're making those pivots. So good example would be Marriott. If there's a company that should not exist today, it's Marriott. After COVID happened and all the planes were grounded, nobody's traveling for business, nobody's traveling for pleasure. That's their whole business. you
Correct.
know and as of not that long ago, they're reaching record highs after the pandemic. So it just goes to show that you're not investing in, you're investing in businesses that will continue to make you successful.
I love that. I love that. For leaders, a piece of tip or advice from leader to leader as leading your own business and others who are tuning in and leading their businesses and making the decisions. What piece of advice can you share from your perspective?
Sure. Two things. Number one, I would say surround yourself with folks that are younger than you, wherever possible, just because they will bring in fresh ideas and, they'll get you to think differently, with things that you may not have considered.
I have to tell you, standing ovation on that one. 100%. I don't think anybody's ever said that. And I am such a strong believer in it. Such a strong believer in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for a number of reasons. You're getting fresh perspectives, and things. We're doing things as a business that we never did before. Like, for example, video clips on, LinkedIn or anything like that. I never would have done that on my own, And it's this next generation that's kind of forcing us to kind of step outside of our comfort zone. But the other thing I would say is do things that you want to do, not because it just because it wasn't done in the past doesn't mean you can't do it. So for example, because we've had, younger team members at times, we would do a even before it became legal, we started to, help them with their student loan repayment instead of their 401k because that was important to them. We were offering something called an experience fund where we were basically giving them a slush fund of money to go have fun. Go on, use it for vacation. You don't have to wait for your bonus or anything like that. You'll get X amount of dollars to use for plane tickets, and it had to be used by the end of the year because we wanted people to go out there and enjoy their lives and not
Have
just be
a
on.
life. As you build a future, you need to enjoy your life or you're building towards nothing.
Mhm. So just being able to have fun with it and incorporate what you want to when you want to, if you see it's appropriate. Who cares that it wasn't what is industry norm?
I love that. Niraj, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here today on Her Success Story.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
And listeners, this is the point of the show for those who are new and just listening in for the first time. Strong suggestion, take a deep breath in and let it out. Think about what piece of Niraj and I's conversation today made sense to you. What was your aha, your takeaway? And then make a decision and make that decision on the one action you're going to put forward today to make this valuable to you. If this was helpful, please pass it forward to other people that this could be helpful for, as well as hit subscribe. We come into your inbox, your podcast apps every week with great new content. And thank you for joining us again. We are kicking off. This is our 8th year of Her Success Story and really excited about it. See you next time.